Welcome, listeners, and thank you for tuning in to the OIC Frequency. This podcast is on the power of frequencies, following up the Power of Understanding podcast, in which we talked about how important it is to have understanding in any situation, even if the people you're speaking to aren't able to reach a place of understanding. We can personally reach places of understanding so that we can respond and benefit the lives of everyone who's in front of us. That's generally what the last podcast was about. If you haven't listened to that, very powerful podcast. And Kevin, you shared a lot of sound words of wisdom on that podcast. You are, in fact, a master of reaching understanding with people and bringing people up to understandings in communication. So thank you for those words of wisdom in the last podcast. I know you've got more on this podcast. This podcast is a little more controversial. It's on the power of frequency, like I said. Frequency is something that more controversy is kind of building up nowadays on a certain frequency, specifically 432 hertz frequency versus the 440 hertz frequency. Now, just to briefly introduce you to what I'm talking about here, if you haven't heard of this type of controversy in frequency, the term hertz is named after the last name of the German physicist Heinrich Rudolf Hertz. And simply put, hertz means nothing more than times per second. It is the measuring unit of vibration. So it's how we measure frequencies. The number of hertz indicates how many times in 1 second the full cycle of a certain vibration occurs. 1 hertz means 1 cycle per second. 432 hertz means 432 times per second. Now, this whole topic of 432 hertz versus 440 hertz actually historically has to do with opera. And different hertz were changed, different frequencies. What's called the standard frequency is what is established so that multiple instruments and voices can be on the same pitch in music. That's why people create specific frequencies to be able to be at a base level in music specifically. And so opera houses, this was really important to them historically. And what happened was, in the past, there's been frequencies kind of going all over the place depending on the orchestrator's personal preference and the instruments that they were using. And what happened was, it was established that 440 hertz would be adopted internationally as the standard baseline frequency. And a lot of people seem to have an issue with this because 432 hertz is seen as preferable by many people. Why is it seen as preferable? Well, I believe that there's a lot of myth, a lot of hearsay, a lot of kind of almost conspiracy surrounding this topic. So to give you some history on 432 hertz, on April 9th, 1988, in Milan, Italy, the Schiller Institute held a conference on the topic of 432 hertz, a pivotal one in the world of opera singers. And it was about changing the pitch from 440 hertz to 432 hertz after 440 hertz had been established as the international baseline frequency, standard frequency. So again, in 1988, the famous soprano Renata Tebaldi and baritone Piero Capucciulli were present as speakers. A man named Luciano Pavarotti was also known to support the cause. And you can look these people up in the links in the description after you're done listening to this podcast and get more of a historical background on all of this information there. The key point presented at the conference is this. In the traditional, what's called bel canto technique, passed on through centuries from Italian masters, there is a specific shift in the registers of the voices of tenors and sopranos. This naturally occurs on the F sharp when instruments are tuned to A equals 432 hertz, when the A note is tuned to 432 hertz. When instruments are tuned to 440 hertz or higher, then the shift will occur around the note F, or even lower. The Schiller Institute maintains that the operas of great composers of the past were composed on a lower pitch. The changes in registers of the voice were used to accentuate the meaning of the lyrics, and therefore these shifts have to occur on the right notes. So this technique in opera called bel canto has evolved. It's been perfected and passed on for centuries by the Italian masters of the voice. And it's a result of close observation of the natural voice and its dynamics. So the whole controversy back in 1988 surrounding 432 hertz was to make it easier, basically, for opera singers, was to make it so that little shift occurred on the right note, which sounded better to the orchestrators of the opera in this what's called bel canto technique. It wasn't about how the frequency affects our bodies. It wasn't about how the frequency affects our emotions. It wasn't about any of that sort of thing besides in how music is affecting us and how an audience is able to hear music. So it's very specific in having to do more musically than it is spiritually. But there is still a lot of controversy surrounding 432 hertz spiritually. And I know you've heard of this, Kevin, and many of our listeners probably have, but 432 hertz is seen as a frequency that many people believe is healthier for the human body, healthier for the human ear. It's supposed to be a warmer tone. It's supposed to kind of ease our emotions internally. It's supposed to be less of a agitating frequency. But this is all kind of based on hearsay. It's not necessarily true. Now, that being said, there have been scientific studies that have been done in order to kind of get to the bottom of whether this difference between 432 and 440 hertz is actually true. Now, in a PubMed article, in a PubMed study that I will have in the description below as well, you can read the full study there. The conclusions of comparison between 432 and 440 showed and suggested that 432 hertz tuned music can decrease the heart rate more than 440 hertz tuned music. So there may be some truth to the fact that many people are saying 432 is a more calming, relaxing frequency. It doesn't necessarily mean, though, that 440 hertz was established as a way to kind of have a war on consciousness. Now, there is information on that out there. It has to do with a lot of different areas, and there's a lot that goes into it. And I've read up on some of this information. However, that's not what we're presenting to you today. We don't want to, put forth anything that is unnecessarily conspiratorial, that doesn't have backed up information, authenticated information behind it. But if you're interested, there's going to be an article in the description where you can learn about that. That being said, a lot of people think that there's a war on consciousness going on, and I personally wouldn't necessarily disagree with that, Kevin. There is a lot of things in marketing, in advertising, in messages on the TV or otherwise that we are receiving that are not healthy for us as human beings. And that's kind of what we're going to get into a little more today regarding frequency. Because guess what? It's not just music that has frequency. It's also the frequencies coming off your TV, your cell phone, frequencies coming into your ear right now, even though there's no music playing from Kevin and I's voice. So Kevin, tell us a little bit about what you feel about this whole war on consciousness in frequency.
Well, first, it's very important to be able to know at what frequency do humans vibrate. This is very, very important, and it establishes a great deal. Because when you understand the importance of frequency and what it does to the human body, you can then be able to then emulate a frequency outward that comes inward, if that makes any sense. So the important parts of the human body vibration frequency are generally located in about the 3 hertz to 17 hertz, according to the international standard ISO 2631 and the vertical vibration of the human body. The sensitive range is located in 6 hertz to 8 hertz. Now, why is that?
Well, the human heart is always vibrating at different frequencies. It's resonating at different frequencies depending on our heart rate, how excited or how relaxed we are.
Yeah. So, what do frequencies do to your body? Our cells exchange information and regulate body functions through the sending out and receiving of specific frequencies. This cell signaling proceeds and regulates all biochemical actions. When these natural frequency signals become scrambled, so does our body's ability to self-regulate and maintain healthy function. It's a known fact. How do you vibrate at a higher frequency? Well, gratitude is 1, love is 2, generosity is 3, meditation and breath work is 4, forgiveness is 5, eat high-vibing foods is 6, reduce or eliminate alcohol and toxins from your body, which is 7, and then number 8, think positive thoughts. Those are just some of the ways that you can be able to have a higher frequency within yourself. But the question is, what happens when you vibrate at a high frequency? The higher the frequency of your energy or your vibration, the lighter you feel in your physical, emotional, and mental bodies. You experience greater personal power, clarity, peace, love, and joy, and you have a little, if any, discomfort or pain in your physical body, and your emotions are easily dealt with. So, frequencies is very important, because when you know the earth frequency, when you know the human frequency, you can be able to then simulate and literally guide frequencies within you and through you to a known destination.
Yeah.
And that's called an outcome.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up too, because that's another thing that's involved in the controversy surrounding 432 hertz. Now, when you say frequency and vibrate at a higher frequency, I think a lot of what you're getting into isn't necessarily having to do with hertz as much as it's having to do with brainwaves. And the reason I say this, I'll get into this a little bit here. But first, I want to tell you about the controversy between 432 and the Earth's resonance. A lot of people think that 432 hertz is in line, in tune mathematically with the Earth's resonance, but actually it's more around 430.65 hertz. So that's what's called the Schumann resonance. The Schumann resonance, and that is mathematically where the Earth is resonating at. So it's really interesting. The human, or the very Earth itself, has a frequency that is resonating out at all times. That it's vibrating at all times, and that's really kind of interesting. Now, quantum physics can get into this. All types of what's called global consciousness can get into this, and HeartMath actually does a little bit of research in this area as far as connecting your frequencies to the Earth frequencies, and we can talk about that in a little bit. But regarding brainwaves, what I'm saying here is because brainwaves also have resonance, brainwaves also have higher and lower frequencies. To give you a brief understanding of it, when we are in what's called a high beta brainwave state, that's an anxious brainwave state, where if we are at high beta, we're most likely going to be anxious, nervous, or feeling bad or angry. But when you step it up a notch to gamma brainwave states, it becomes euphoric. It becomes very focused. And that's kind of what I think you're getting at here when you're talking about being at a higher frequency, experiencing positive emotions and positive thoughts and feelings, being able to deal with negative emotions better, because that's exactly what happens when you go from a high beta to a step up into gamma. You're able to deal with the anxiety that you were once feeling when you were in high beta.
Noah, let me ask you a question. When you get fired up and your voice goes higher and the volume of your voice goes higher, how do you feel?
Yeah, it's more excitable. I see what you're saying.
Now, when you speak either monotone or just naturally without letting your emotions affect you, you set out a different vibration and a different intent. So vibrations are a signal sign of intent. People can be able to literally send out good or bad vibes. And it happens often and frequently.
Yep.
And it's a silent acknowledgement of your presence prior to you even speaking. That's how deep this is, right? So, what does 440 hertz do to the brain? 440 hertz is considered cerebral music that helps with the listener's cognitive development and is associated with the activation of the third eye chakra. Listening to this higher frequency is extremely potent and an effortless way to experience a deeper dive within our consciousness. So, what this means in whole is that different frequencies allow you to be able to do things in a positive way, in a new way that you would not normally have thought of. By being able to tap in, to listen to be able to let these frequencies that are positive move through you, you're going to have a more positive resonance to your character as far as who you are when speaking to other people.
You were saying 440 hertz does that? Or was that was 440? Okay, and it's interesting because that, I don't know where you're getting that information from, but the 440 hertz is what many people believe is a war on consciousness frequency, something that causes agitation. But that article's saying virtually the opposite.
Well, because here's the whole thing. Agitation is both positive and negative simultaneously.
Oh, it can be, yep.
Yeah, it always is. Because you can't have positive without a negative, right?
Sure.
Electrons and protons, right?
Yep.
Okay. So the article is correct because the whole thing is that what you resonate with is what you manifest. That's a deeper dive, right? But the bottom line is that you have positives and negatives going into each brain cell, and then it's your free will choice to choose which one that you're wanting to resonate out with. That is far deeper than just a standardized way of saying what 440 hertz does.
Yeah, and that obviously goes much deeper than just in the opera, just in the orchestras. So regarding
when regarding Mozart, and all these other great musicians throughout the world, they would literally use a toning fork and different toning forks to be able to literally strike inspiration into their being.
Yeah, and I know that Mozart did use tuning forks. There has been archaeological evidence that shows he did use tuning forks as well as historical in his music. But that doesn't mean he was necessarily tuning it to certain frequencies in hertz, because hertz wasn't established as a thing yet. Hertz wasn't a thing, but the tuning forks were a thing, which is really kind of interesting historically.
Yeah, because tuning forks have been around for ages, centuries, right? Yep. Same thing with the metronome, but in previous lives, is that instead of a metronome, it was drums.
Yep.
And people would utilize drums to be able to do the same exact thing.
Yep.
So now, with that common sense level of understanding, it's now easy to be able to understand that the harder you hit the drum or the softer you hit the drum would create a frequency, a wavelength, a message being sent to everyone else. That's why we adopted it for our military when we went into war, is that the drums would play and you know that we're about ready to march into war.
Right.
Because it's psychologically, subliminally, a very meaningful intent of that vibration is that war is upon us and we are going into war.
Yeah, and that has a lot to do also with how you're talking about allowing yourself to resonate with certain frequencies, and it affects your emotional state. It often, Well, it must have been another intention of the drumming going into war to be able to either calm down the soldiers' hearts or keep them steady, maybe going into war so they don't get the jitters as much, or maybe even to hype them up and get them prepared, get their hearts racing to go into battle.
When two or more are gathered in Jesus' name is church, right? So now, if you're looking at it at the broad perspective of things, is that when you've got 100 people, 1,000 people, 10,000 people, all doing a simultaneous, harmonious beating of a drum, or singing, or chanting, or incantations, whatever, something is going to happen.
Right.
Has to. Physical law. It has to. Something has happened. Biblically, we brought down walls. So frequencies do play a large role and a part in everything that we do. The reason why you listen to the music that you listen to is because there's a frequency that you resonate with.
Right.
The reason why you listen to certain speakers and people is because you resonate with them.
Right.
Everything you do in life is a resonancy and a frequency. And when you tap into, and this is not occultic, it's not anything else other than authentic, but when you tap into the right frequencies of the right tuning fork of your life, you can be able to transform your life as easy as striking a tuning fork.
Right. You just got to know that frequency. Then you got to have the intention and the understanding of how to reach that place. Now, I want to talk a little bit about that, Kevin, because we can get into all this information about how 440 hertz activates the third eye, or 432 hertz allows you to resonate with the Earth's frequency, 430.65, whatever it be. But that's not important. That's not the main point of this podcast. The main point of this podcast is what you just stated. Being able to allow yourself to resonate at certain frequencies by choice, not having to utilize tuning forks or other modalities like that, but be able to actually understand your being so well that you can actually snap into a more authentic expression. Now, HeartMath is one organization that I love to talk about because they are very good at doing exactly that. They've developed a 3-step process, just 3 simple steps to be able to actually allow yourself to connect with frequencies of positivity, frequencies that allow yourself to feel better. They also allow yourself to get into a more what's called heart-brain coherent state, in which there's more communication going on between the heart and the brain. You're more intuitive and you're just healthier. You're less stressed in those moments. So by utilizing HeartMath's 3-step process, we actually increase the gray matter in certain areas of the brain that are associated with more control, more ability, more positivity, more introspection, more decision-making skills, things like that, and allows the areas of the brain associated with stress to have less influence over our lives. So this 3-step process, the first step is to start breathing at a slower rate. And it's very simple. That's all it is. The second step is to actually think about a memory, think about a person in your life, think about something that you're grateful for, something that you feel appreciation for. And by resonating with that idea, that memory, whatever it be, you allow yourself to actually draw in neurologically in your brain. You start to fire off the same type of areas of the brain that are associated with that memory that happened when you had that memory established, and you fire off, you start to actually feel appreciation, gratitude, and all these positive things. And that's the second step. So you have a slower breath now, and you're now connected with gratuity or appreciation. And then the third step is actually, it's really interesting. This is the quick coherence technique. It's actually to start resonating that out, and with your own intentionality, be able to send it out towards people that you love. So you're now putting other people into the mix. And it sounds kind of weird. It sounds kind of different, but it actually is very helpful, because when you are more focused on other people than you are yourself, that has been shown to decrease depression. It's been shown to allow you to connect with positivity much easier. It's a selfless mindset that they're establishing within you. And these 3 simple steps, slow your breath, allow yourself to think of something you're grateful for, and then resonate that out, send that positivity towards other people that you love, is actually a great way to start resonating at what you call a higher frequency, Kevin, one that's more emotionally stable and positive. And that's why I really appreciate heart math and the techniques they've developed to be able to establish your own ability within yourself to resonate at a higher frequency.
Mm-hmm. So we will have the heart math link listed below as well.
Yep.
So the bottom line is that everything in life has a frequency. Everything in life has a vibration. Everything in life has its own unique fingerprint, just like we do, when it comes to all matters of the heart. How you tap into it, how you resonate with it, and how you then project it really says a lot about who you are as a person.
Mm-hmm.
So be mindful, be careful of frequencies, and I mean all of them. You can literally be able to tune in and tune out different frequencies by literally wearing a headset, by earbuds, or whatever. But if something is not jiving with you, if something is not resonating with you, if something is not going well in your life, you may need to be able to hear something of a better inspiration or a frequency, right?
Yep.
To be able to motivate you, to give you that all spark, to be able to give you that motivation, to be able to give you that enthusiasm, to be able to give you whatever it is of positive enlightenment, to be able to overcome whatever it is that may be affecting you. Mm-hmm. And then in return is that you want to be able to keep that within your residency so that you can be able to keep your environment that you're surrounding yourself in complete harmony and union with your mind's eye as far as what you're wanting to get accomplished. So if you are mixing or scrambling up your frequencies, it's not a surprise at all, personally, to be able to see one confused, mixed up, and kind of scatterbrained when it comes to matters of all things of the heart.
Yeah.
So that's why heart math is really important for a lot of people, because it really breaks down the difficulties and makes them very simplistic for everyone to be able to understand. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm just not promoting heart math, but I'm also promoting our own life coaching. And what we do is that we help you to be able to get on the right pathway to a better life by tuning in to these episodes, our videos, and our one-on-one sessions that we have, allowing you to be able to really have harmony in all 3 of them, so that when you want to be able to go to the next level in life, you can be able to tune in to the right hertz of whatever it is that you're wanting to accomplish. And that's why here at the OIC, the Omnipresent Information Connection Podcast, we give you that well-rounded, good feeling, righteous intent the first time around.
Yep, and it won't hurt.
Yes. It definitely won't hurt your soul.
Yep. And great point, Kevin, because we don't just bring one organization to the mix, one technique to the mix. We bring the best of the information and techniques that we've accumulated over many years. You obviously more than myself, having years.
Yep.
So that we can bring multiple different angles into your life situation and really establish something that works for you. That's what being a life coach is all about, being able to coach you into the best life and lifestyle that you're wanting to reach. And so it's very powerful. It's all the information is very important, and some of it is more analytical, more scientific, but a lot of it is really just simple, straightforward, easy to understand content, especially here on the OIC podcast, because we understand that not everyone likes to get into the analytical, not everyone likes to get into the scientific. But one powerful thing about you, Kevin, is that you're able to speak in such a coherent way and make complex ideas very simple and life applicable. life applicable.
Yes, because what you literally teach is something that you need to have within you to be able to properly teach it, right?
Right.
And so I don't just talk a good talk. I'm the living example of my walk. And it's important that when you get into that right mindset too, you can be able to then tap in and know with intimacy the right frequency that's meant for you.
Yeah, and that's all about authentic leadership, which is a great podcast to listen to. We'll have that in the description for you for easier access. On top of that, the Authentic Education podcast that we had recorded is a great one to listen to if you like what you just heard Kevin say. I definitely recommend that podcast, Authentic Education, because it's true. You cannot be a great and authentic teacher if you have not established those teachings within yourself, if you don't go outside the classroom and your students are able to see you actually living that life that you're teaching in the classroom. And it's so important. But it's just basic stuff like that really makes a difference between, for the students, for whoever's learning from the people who are speaking.
Yeah, and everything that we do, listeners, is to allow you to be able to continuously build your trust of your foundation of who you are as a person, so that you will never, ever, from day one of our podcast, from our videos to our study series, ever put your toes into quicksand. Everything that we do allows you to have the foundation and the building blocks to be able to create a life and a lifestyle that is not only important and impertinent, but is relevant to everything that you do and who you hang around and associate with too. So if this really resonates with you, please, listeners, do whatever you can to be able to share this information with those that you love today, so that other people can love you back in kind.
Yes, and we'd love to connect with more of your information that you personally have experienced. So in the comments section of this podcast, we'd love it if you could comment what allows you to resonate at a higher frequency, what it is that really establishes that base level of understanding and authenticity within yourself. We'd love to hear what works for you. And maybe we'll even be able to share some of those techniques on future podcasts. Maybe there's information that we haven't heard of that you can share with us and that you can share with the rest of the listeners. So that's why we always open our comments up to whoever wants to share information that works for them.
Amen. So, for those that don't know, today is the new day of knowing that what you say matters, what you do matters. So, tune into the frequencies, turn into the hertz, turn into the lifestyle that literally resonates a positive image, a positive message, and a positive outcome. All right here at the Omnipresent Information Connection podcast.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you, listeners, for tuning into this frequency on the OIC podcast. We look forward to meeting you on the next podcast, in which we are going to be talking more in depth about music and the power of music. We look forward to meeting you there.
This has been another life-enhancing, authenticated podcast aired by the OIC and brought to you by the faithful OIC sponsors and contributors. Please tune in every week and subscribe to our podcast. And while you're there, explore our website with all the posts, videos, and podcasts that we have created with you in mind. While you're on the journey through our website, you will see our Patreon page where you can become a faithful contributor yourself with the freedom to be a part of our team today. Thank you.